Okay, over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 6th show and tell of this phase of product development for BoPS, a new back office planning system for local planning authorities. Firstly, we need to advise you that this show and tell is being recorded and will be available on this YouTube channel in due course alongside all of our other show and tells. My name is Tom Buttrick and I'm one of the product owners for BoPS here at Southwark Council, where we are working with partner boroughs Buckinghamshire and Lambeth councils and our delivery partner Unboxed to develop the BoPS tool. Next slide, please. For those who don't know BoPS, it's a new software application designed by and for local planning authorities that will process planning applications in a more efficient and intuitive way, saving time and resources. Next slide, please. So where are we? Well, we've finished sprint 6. We have 2 sprints left. And our primary objective for this phase of development is to prepare the MVP of BoPS for private and public beta testing for processing lawful development certificate applications. We are and we will be using data and drawings that are submitted through our sister project, the Reducing Invalid Planning Applications digital tool led by Lambeth Council. We are also working on developing householder planning application functionality as well. Next slide, please. So what is this show and tell? Well, it enables us to show you, the audience, what we've been up to every 2 weeks through the last sprint. And we're going to show you what we've been up to today. Next slide, please. If you have any questions at all, please click on the link in the description below and add your question, and we'll read it out at the end and answer it accordingly. So over to Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah, if you could go to the next slide, please. So we have a new member of the team, Peter, who I'm going to invite to introduce himself.
Thanks. So I've just joined Southwark Council as a digital transformation officer. I've been working with Ripper and BoPS in the past in previous roles at Wycombe Council and Lambeth Council. And by trade, I'm a digital transformation and change manager. So really happy to be joining the Southwark team and back on these projects. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. If you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so we're in sprint 6, as Tom mentioned. We've got a couple more sprints to do. The theme for this sprint was loosely around making some enhancements to the permitted development MVP that we're going into testing imminently, but also looking at the future a bit by doing some research work into the householder planning applications. You can see a list of the things we've been doing on the right hand side here. James is going to go through each one in detail, so I won't go through them now. I'm just going to hand over to James.
Hello, yes, so I'm James, tech lead on the project. I'm going to go through and describe some of the changes that have happened on the development side of things first, and then we'll go through a quite extensive end-to-end demo at the end. So first bit of chunk of work that we've been working on is integrating more and more with Ripper. So Ripper, the Reducing Invalid Planning Applications project, is continuing to work on a working end-to-end solution for submitting the applications to us. And as they do that, they've requested some changes to the API, which is the way that the 2 applications talk to each other. So we've been making tweaks along those lines, as well as figuring out how we display that data that Ripper is sending us. Some of those changes that have come through is that we've simplified that API quite a bit, sort of rationalized it, sort of technical details, but also some new features in there. So in some situations, Ripper will send us a question answer that it itself has answered, saving the applicant having to do that. But we want to flag that to the planner that Ripper answered this, not the applicant. So we now support that. We support Ripper sending us the policy reference, the legislation that it thinks that question relates to. And so we'll show that as well as support for additional notes. They may say yes or no to an answer, but they may be able to add more information along the way. And next we have activity logs. So I'm going to pass over to Melissa, who's been leading the development on that.
Thanks, James. So an activity log or an audit log, we found this feature would be useful to help with the reporting of data, to help you understand team performance, and to help with seeing the history behind the assessment of an application. You can see the design is here on the right, and we went through a couple of different iterations. It required understanding what would be the better design to facilitate this process, as well as then understanding what actions we wanted to be audited at every step of the way. So this should also make it easier to respond to appeals because you get a history of the reasoning behind each of the decisions that were made. And also, like I already said, to facilitate the reporting of data in the long term. Over to the next slide. And to Rian.
So one of the other things we did based on our user research was, after finding out that it would be really useful for the planners at assessment stage to be able to see the location straight away, we've included a map link within the application information that will open in a new tab and take you directly to the location of the property. Next slide, please. And along with that, we've added some other iterative improvements based on research. For example, with the move towards more universal use of UPRNs, we now display that on the application page. We've improved the behaviour of the way the different accordions expand and close on the application page to make it easier for people to view the information within. We've added a useful link to download a PDF of the decision notice after the application's closed, so that if an applicant phones and wants it sent out again or something like that, then the PDF's available. And also, which is important, we've added the facility for a comment or a note to be added to a granted decision on the decision notice, so that this is available ultimately on the register. Next slide, please. Over to James.
Yep, so back to me. So I thought the best thing to demo where we are at the moment is to do a complete end-to-end of showing where Ripper is and where BoPS is and how they interact. So I'm now going to pass over to Emily from Lambeth to show the Ripper side of things. So if I stop sharing my screen and introduce Emily.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So I'm Emily Hadley, and I'm a Planning Policy Officer at Buckinghamshire Council, helping with the project on both Ripper and BoPS. So I'm going to be demoing the Ripper half today, which is the submission of a lawful development application, which I'll just run through. I'll very briefly explain, but there'll be more information on the Ripper website, which is ripper.digital, which we can sort of put links to at the end, but I'll just run through this. So you should see here, first of all, is my screen sharing correctly? Yes, excellent, thank you. So this is the introduction screen, so I'm going to enter the property. I'm going to submit this hypothetical lawful development certificate application 2, which is going to be 50 Spencer Road. So I'm using the Lambeth instance of the lawful development certificate service, so this will be a Lambeth address. So I'll run through. So this is telling me information about my property and some information that's been pulled through from GIS. It's going to start asking me questions, so I will just answer these on the basis of my knowledge of this property. So this is where I submit my boundary. So I'm going to draw this, just show me the area of my application. It's going to ask me details about the project. So this is some of the data that's going to be fed through to BoPS. So I am going to add some roof lights to my rear roof slope. That is my project. As with everything, there's some further information, and this will hopefully be fed through to BoPS as well. So in terms of the project, I'm just going to add some roof lights. Of course, you can add as many or as little of these as you like. We're just going to keep it simple. Was the house always a house? So this is one of these legislative questions, so you'll see this more as it comes through to BoPS. But I will just answer these as an applicant. All questions that as an applicant I should be able to answer. Now it's asked me technical information with diagrams, so I'm going to answer these on the basis of my knowledge of the project. I know it is lower than 15 centimetres and it's going to be lower than the top of the roof. It's going to be to my rear roof slope. so it will not be side facing. Now going to enter some information about me. So in this case, I would be applying as the applicant, as a private individual. I'm going to do my first name and my last name and my title. Yes, my contact address is the same as my property address. Now for an email address, I'm going to take a slight diversion. I'm going to use James's email address for this. So make sure I have this correctly. And box.co. Telephone number, we're just going to do that. This is some questions that we need to know if we're assessing this application, so they contact me. Information about ownership, so I'm the sole owner of my house. This is not an agricultural holding, and I confirm this is true. This is going to be collecting some data on materials, so I will just answer this quite quickly. So materials of the existing roof. The roof lights, let's say they're going to be painted wood and glass. They will be painted a dark colour. This is where we start submitting some drawings. So I'm just going to pull together some plans that have been previously prepared. So the existing floor plans, copies over, so you can see they load in. Proposed floor plans. Do they show the entire property? We'll say for the purposes of this, yes. Existing elevations and proposed elevations. This project does not involve alterations to ground levels, or it would ask for additional plans. Do not want to upload any photographs or visualizations. But does involve alterations to the roof. So now it's prompting me to upload additional plans. So I'll do the existing roof plan and the proposed roof plan. No other additional drawings, but those are all of my drawings and documents now submitted. So now for the declarations. So this is a standard part of any application. So I'm just going to say none of the above apply to me. So my declaration, yes, the information is truthful, accurate and complete for the purposes of this demo. This is the sort of screen that's presenting the data that I've submitted as part of this. Some of these are still being worked through both projects, but for the most part, this gives an example of what the data will look like as it goes through, along with links to the drawings. So now time to send the application. Through the power of magic, I'm going to pay through Apple Pay and pay and submit my application. And there we go. So I have just demoed submitting an application through the current instance of the Lawful Development Certificate service. And now I will stop sharing my screen.
Hello. Oh, hang on. There we go. So let me escape that. So if now we're switching from the applicant to the planner. So I will be the planner. And if I search for 50 Spencer Road, you can see that that application, which we just saw being made, has been created in BoPS. So if I click through here, you can see that we've got the address. We've had the UPRN added. You can see some of the payment reference that came through, the GovUK pay reference that came through here. The contact information came through here. The documents came through here, so you can see those documents. I can view them all here. And then under the proposal details is all of the questions that questions and answers that RIPA has sent us. So you can see in here that are there any protected trees on the property? So this has been auto-answered by RIPA. So this is something that RIPA has answered. So the planner can know that that's how that's come about. And you can also see that where RIPA was saying that it related to some legislation, it will mention it, link through to the URL for that legislation if they want to read more about it. And I think that's everything to do with you can see that it's noted that the conservation area, that the property was in a conservation area, and that's also been linked through. So all of that all of the features of RIPA are now beginning to appear in BoPS. Also quickly, I can show you that we now have a map link. So if I click that map link, it will immediately take me to 50 Spencer Road, new window. So that is good. I think that pretty much shows all the integration from Ripper. I will also show the audit log whilst I'm here. So you can see that if we very quickly go through and I pretend that I'm a planner, I'm going to validate them. I'm going to assess the proposal. So I'm going to say that I think everything has been met. And this is something that will appear. So this meets all requirements. Obviously, there would be a much better notice here that would appear there, but this is what will show on the decision notice. I also would like to explain to my manager of why I came to that decision. This is a private notice, so done all the things I'm meant to do. Again, I'm sure there's more technical information that can be there. I'm going to submit this recommendation to my manager. Then I'm going to take another hat off and put on my manager hat. And I'm going to review this assessment. I agree with it, just for simplicities. All looks good. And if I publish a determination, you can see that my public notice from the assessor came through into the decision notice. That's all here. I'm going to determine the application. Now, all of that was logged in the activity log. So you can see here that this was created through the API at this time, at this date, and that's what happened. Then I assigned it to the Ripper testing user, and that was done by the Ripper testing user. So that would be the name of whoever was logged in and did that action, along with the time. So normally this, I doubt this would happen quite this quickly. So you'd be able to see when each action was done, and what the action that happened. And sometimes we'll have this additional information, like what was the notes that were made during that period. And I think that is everything that I'm going to demo on that. So I'll go back to the presentation. So that's the end-to-end thing. Whilst we've been developing all of that, there's been some meetings going on in the background about things to explore in the future. We call them spikes. So they're sort of undefined bits of work, more explorations. I've been looking at ways of accessing the planning history for a property, because I know that's a feature that's been requested a lot, to be able to very easily see, well, there is at the moment, people will have to access the public register. I'd like to, similar to how we've done with the map links, be able to just create a quick link through there, but that requires me integrating and figuring out how Uniform does that. So I've been exploring that. Also been exploring the Hackney Submit My Planning Application service as a possible other input source, and also just doing all of the admin work of making sure that we can integrate with existing systems as needed. That ends the technical part of everything. I'm now going to pass over to Ali.
Thanks, James. So I'm the designer and researcher on the project. So during this sprint, we've been synthesizing the findings from the user testing we did in the previous sprints. I'm going to kind of like show you a few of the kind of insights that came out of the synthesis and that testing. So next slide, please. So the first insight was kind of around the planning officer's journey through the system. So that is the first step of like validation. So as we know, each council kind of approaches validation slightly differently. Some councils have a separate team that validate an application, and within other councils, the planning officer might validate an application and then assess it. Kind of keeping that in mind, each kind of tester kind of approached this step slightly differently. Some thought that they were just kind of like double checking what a validation team had already done. And others were kind of saying, oh, if I was validating application, I would have the validation checklist open next to me, so I knew that I hadn't missed anything. So kind of like keeping that in mind, how can we maybe integrate some of that guidance into the tool so that we can ensure that each application is validated in kind of a consistent and uniform way. Next slide, please. So the next insight is around like the assessing the proposal, which James just kind of demoed, adding that note. So within the permitted development, so MVP world, we've decided to not include an officer report. That's kind of like a decision. Some people feel like it's very much like a tick box exercise. But what we're then doing within the BoPS system is asking a planning officer to kind of summarize the kind of like the assessment into a comment that will go to your manager. But kind of because this is a new system, everyone kind of didn't know how to approach this and did it slightly differently. Some people just kind of said, oh, meets the requirements of Class A, or some kind of people kind of gave a bit more of an in-depth description. But what it kind of highlighted was the fact that maybe we need to give more guidance around how to summarize and what things you should be including within this comment. Next slide, please. And then from the kind of the other perspective, when a manager was like reviewing an assessment, it kind of highlighted that maybe this small comment was not kind of enough evidence that a planning officer had assessed the application. And then maybe it'd be valuable to give a bit more guidance to ensure that like a manager is, I don't know, feels confident that everything has been checked, and then it kind of de-risks the process. Next slide, please. One of the other insights was around managers kind of approach an application slightly differently if it's granted or refused. So maybe it would be a really nice feature to be able to instantly see on the overview of an application if it's been granted or refused. So then the manager will kind of go through that process slightly differently. Next slide, please. As well as kind of synthesizing, we've also been doing some research into the consultation process for full householder. So looking at both kind of like public and statutory consultation. So how, you know, that process like starts, how neighbours or consultees are identified and contacted, and then also how that information and research comments are brought back into back office planning systems. One of the challenges that kind of was highlighted again was that each council kind of approaches like public consultation slightly differently. So that's like kind of that initial contacting neighbours or like letting the public know that a planning application has been submitted. So councils kind of some do like just a site notice and maybe an e-alert, but others will kind of favour neighbourhood letters. So how can we create kind of a consistent approach within BoPS that maybe is more desirable to use and kind of switches everybody over to the same system. But some of the opportunities that was also highlighted was how can we kind of better guide public consultation, so to ensure that the public know to comment around like planning related matters. And then that might also create kind of better feedback and for the planning officer to comment on. And then also, how can we consistently identify internal and external consultees? And then the last one is again, how we can display feedback and responses in a new system. So we know that's done slightly differently for public and statutory. Can we create a consistent approach that adds value for the planning officer? I'm now going to pass back over to Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. Yeah, next slide, please, James. Just as a quick summary, because we are running over, we've shown quite a lot today and we've got quite a lot of questions coming through. So I'll run through this quite quickly. I guess one thing I should say is that our backlog of, which is our kind of the list of things we're working on, we've done, that we're doing, and that we will be doing in future, is publicly available. And I've finally created a more accessible link for it. So if you wanted to click Rebrandly BoPS backlog, you'll be able to see the backlog and everything on it. I'm going to answer one of the questions quickly now, actually, because you will see an item on the backlog, which is around providing access to that audit log via a secure API. There is a ticket in the backlog. It's not a high priority story for us, given that we've just created the audit log itself, but the plan is that that will be available for analysis via the API, and it will need to be a secure API because, as you can see, there are comments between the planning officer and the manager in there. So to prepare for live testing, we will be setting up the live environment. We're currently working in a staging environment. That would include a live version of a live account for Notify, which is the thing we use to send messages, the Gov UK platform. We've decided to create a way for planning officers to manually enter basic details of an application. We think this might be useful to pick up some planning applications that come through the post during testing. We thought that might be a nice test too, rather than relying on things coming through via the API. We want to make it a bit easier for planning officers to track why an application is invalid whilst they're chasing down replacement documents or whatever it is. So there's an opportunity to comment on that. We're still working on the document tags and making better use of those document tags and using them in a more structured way, and maybe using them to describe the document more clearly. I think James mentioned we've been looking at the Hackney Submit My Planning application as a vehicle to help us test householder applications. It's an open source project, so we're able to look at it and maybe set it up ourselves in an instance. It will make testing a lot easier. Showing a site planning history, James already mentioned. I think we've already talked about, Ali mentioned that we're going to be doing some more work on the consultation process, maybe run some workshops to try and see what an MVP version of that might look like. We're also working on the policies, the data protection stuff, the legal agreements to just run this thing in a live environment for a while for the testing. And we've got a pretty comprehensive list of scenarios between Ripper and BoPS for testing these applications. I think that's about it for us. I'll hand over to Tom just to wrap things up and answer some of these questions. Are you there, Tom? Tom's on mute.
Apologies. Thank you, Martin. Sorry. I thought we'd get to the end there without having someone on mute. So apologies about that. We have a number of questions in Slido, but if you do want to get involved, do contact us. We're happy to demo to your council, so get in touch. So there was a link in the description. There's the link on screen now. If you have any questions, do drop them in now. We've got, looking at the list, we have 9 questions already, so we're going to try and shoot through those super quickly, but we can answer them at a later stage as well, even the next show and tell or via email, etc. So first question is from Chris from Commentary. Hi, Chris. What happens if all of your drawings are on one plan when submitting a lawful development certificate? Do you have to keep adding dummy documents to satisfy the requirements for documents? Now, this is, I think, a Ripper question. Yeah. So I'm just going to maybe hand that over to Emily, if possible, just to, if she could respond.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Chris, for this question. It's very useful and something that definitely the Ripper team is looking at. So the direction of the tool at the moment, first of all, I'm not speaking on behalf of the whole project team. I would really recommend, if you have any other questions, to go to the website ripper.digital or email digitalplanning@lambeth.gov.uk. But as an initial answer, the tool is going to promote trying to submit plans individually where possible. This helps sort of the movement of data and kind of identifying relevant plans sooner. But obviously the option is there. We do know there are user needs of submitting all plans on one document. A way around this could be, for example, uploading the same plan with different plans on it in those individual data fields. But that's something that user testing will continue to explore, whether it's worth going down individual plans or combined plans. Something definitely we need to get some more feedback on. But it's very useful feedback, and I'll make sure that is relayed to the project team. So thank you for asking.
Thank you, Emily. Next question, and I will shoot through these quite quickly because there's a number. Can you please show how a planner would easily log into the BoPS system? Does it sit on a web browser or does it need to be installed on every user's machine? Now, I don't think we can demo maybe at the next show and tell, but in terms of actually how it is accessed, it is a web service, and there will be a standard login for the planning officer to log on to their council's version of BoPS. I think is that anything else, Martin, to add to that?
No, it's web-based. It's a single application, but there are separate subdomains for each council, so you can only log in, as you said, but it's all web-based. Yeah, nothing installed on local machines.
Great, thank you, Martin. Next question is, what kind of data is sent to BoPS from Ripper? Now, I'm going to give the kind of non-technical answer, which is obviously the data that the application data, which is the text data that's received. Entered by the applicant into BoPS, and also the PDFs that are then uploaded, the drawings, and that they get pushed across as well. James, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that in a technical
I can provide a significantly more technical question, which is the API is open, so you can see everything that we've currently got going between. So you can see here we've got application type, the site information, payment reference, ward, proposal details, all of the questions here. And then the doc files are sent this way and any constraints that way. And this is an open API that Ripper can use, anyone else can use. This is how applications are submitted into BoPS. Does that answer the question?
I think that's a good go. Thank you, James. Maybe I can just keep you there for the next question as well,
sure.
Which is, can you view the audit log via a secure API?
So theoretically, yes, as Martin mentioned previously, it just needs to be prioritized. There's no technical reason why it can't be. We just need to do the user research of what that would need to do and how and what needs to be secured, what needs to not be secured. But there's no blocker for that being developed when it needs to be developed.
That's great. Thank you, James. I'll move on. How does the tool link with our digital online planning policies map, i.e. planning designations and boundaries? And can the polygons go directly into our map system? Martin, do you want to start with that one?
Yep. I don't really understand the question. I think what it's alluding to is things like GIS integrating with council GIS systems. Is that
yeah?
Right,
so
Tom?
My take is obviously we have a polygon, a red line plan, for example, coming through, and then does BoPS recognize, for example, the data sets that relates to? Now Ripper does in terms of identifying, for example, conservation areas and stuff, but that where BoPS is presently is that it's taking data from Ripper itself at this stage in terms of any kind of planning designations.
Yeah, absolutely right. So I think we all acknowledge that there'll be a lot of value in future to integrating with other GIS systems, but we want to kind of, there's a lot of councils with a lot of different systems. So we want to try and get this common system that works across councils to start with, and then we'll think about integrations. Forgive me if we haven't. I know at previous show and tells we've talked about this idea of a polygon being passed in the API through to from Ripper through to BoPS, and us doing something with that in the GIS system. That's kind of gone a bit on the back burner, I must say, with the polygon. I don't think it's in the current API spec. James might be able to know.
Sorry, Martin, if I may just add there, I think it's something that we will look at an appropriate time, because I think actually that polygon could be used for other purposes, definitely, in terms of, for example, publishing planning application data to a council web map or similar, rather than just a bullet, like a point of data. So I think that definitely something we can look at moving forward. I'll jump on to the next questions. A series from Rich in Camden. Hi, Rich. Hope you're well. It says, Ripper gives a description of why is PD, so that data coming through from Ripper. Isn't the comment box for officers in BoPS a duplication? Could it use the Ripper comment and give officer a chance to comment on that?
I can pick that one up. So so what we've learned from working with planning officers is that there's a big kind of a big leap, I think, before planning officers are ready to accept any kind of recommendation or decision from Ripper. I think it might well be worthwhile at the moment showing that in some way. So I think your suggestion is a good one, Rich, to show and make that available to the planning officers and give them the opportunity to kind of edit it or agree with it or disagree with it. That's certainly something we could look at. And I think Ali mentioned we're definitely going to be looking at how we can provide more structure. At the moment, we've got several open kind of free text comment boxes, but we're certainly going to be looking at ways in which we can either provide builders to help planning officers build up those comments, or suggestions or templates or something, and that might well be a good starting point. So yeah, it's a good suggestion, something we'll look at.
Great, thanks, Martin. Next is just a comment from Rich again. Brilliant seeing the integration with Ripper, really exciting. The Google Map link is a simple addition and a great idea. So thank you, team, for developing that. Next question is, can you clarify where the where the element is in the system that checks the information against the submission to start off automate the response for the officer. Just going to try and unpick that question, but thank you for the question. Now, I guess this is for me, it's maybe about the interrelationship between the data that comes through from Ripper to BoPS. Anyone else would like to have a go at that one?
I'm not quite clear what that means either. And one of the frustrations of us not having a live session here is that, I mean, if the person that posted that could maybe just quickly post something clarifying what they mean exactly.
That would be great. Or just email us and we can pick that up with you. We're very happy to do that. So apologies. Next.
Even if it's now, these Slido questions remain open. So maybe you could put your name in as well as something and we could get back to you. That'd be great.
Very happy to. Next question is following on from above. This may actually link into this regarding the Ripper process. Sorry, the Ripper process gives a response based on the submission, PD or not. I don't see you in your demo that this element was included. So this actually may link to the previous question.
I think so. I think that's a similar question. It's like Ripper's doing some smart stuff to suggest, to look at policies, to look at the answers and make a recommendation or at least describe whether it might meet permitted development rights or not. Should we be making more use of that? And I think the answer is potentially yes.
That's great.
Did you want me to add any more to that? Just
please do, Emily. Please do.
So this does. But so what this person may have seen the Find Out If You Need Planning Permission service. So this is the sort of big screen that says, based on what you submitted, we think it may be X result. The intention is to pass that data through to BoPS, but obviously this at the moment we've sort of managed to demonstrate the end-to-end process, and now it's about refining that data that comes through. So I would imagine that information will be passed through, identifying the sort of different elements, but it may not. We're still working out how that's going to be presented to the user. So very much still part of the process at the moment.
That's great, Emily. Thank you. And I think, the last question actually is the same question. So first of all, thank you for all your questions. Really appreciate that. Some really good feedback there. And yeah, do get in touch if you have any other questions. And we'll be happy to answer those. Do get in touch if you'd like a demo or if you'd like to do some testing. You work for local planning authority. And without further ado, I think we can say that's the end. The next show and tell is the 18th of March, 2 weeks time, again at 10:30 on a Thursday. And we look forward to showing you the results of the next 2 weeks' work. So thank you to the team. Thank you for joining.